In the vast triad hall of the Galactic Confederation, 3 Eldari judges stood in perfect symmetry, their crystalline forms catching the light of a distant star. The central figure raised a tendril-like appendage, and the chamber fell silent. By unanimous vote of the Confederation Council, we hereby declare the species known as humans to be an uncontrollable threat. The species designation Earth shall be formally removed from the Covenant maps. All Earth fleet vessels will be neutralized within the next 72 solar hours. The pronouncement echoed across thousands of worlds. On screens throughout the galaxy, Earth's image flashed with a pulsing red border. Chaotic species, galaxy-wide threat. In the depths of New Geneva, beneath the Negev mountain range, General Marcus Archer watched the broadcast in absolute silence. The command center around him had gone still. Many soldiers frozen in disbelief. Wars were supposed to be relics of a distant past. Beside him, Major Elena Keller exhaled slowly. They don't know how long we've been preparing. Archer's weathered face betrayed nothing as he turned to her. Initiate analog legacy protocol. It's time they learned what we really are. Beneath the surface of Earth, in chambers unknown to the Confederation, the mechanisms of defense had been quietly building for centuries. Transmit the historical resistance footage across all analog bands, Archer commanded. Focus on the Korean cipher first. Within moments, ancient black and white footage began broadcasting across frequencies the Confederation had long abandoned as primitive. Images of human resilience through centuries of adversity, wars, natural disasters, plagues, streamed into the darkness of space. The first fragments reached the border outposts of the Confederation. A Rathari communications officer frowned at his console. "Sir, we're receiving historical data from Earth." General Sorak, the Rathari diplomat who had championed Earth's elimination, barely glanced up. "Primitive last gestures. Ignore them." But the officer hesitated. "Sir, these records, they don't match our archives. These humans, they're warriors." In the depths of New Geneva, Major Keller stood before a massive holographic display showing the solar system. "Project Gravemind is ready, General." Archer nodded. "How many ships?" 12,000, sir. All equipped with obsidian hex sheath technology. They've been hiding beyond Neptune's orbit for decades." The corner of Archer's mouth twitched. "If we wait any longer, the Confederation will strike first." Keller's eyes narrowed. "Then let's heat up the signature. Prepare the Void Fleet for emergence." On the far side of the solar system, hidden in Neptune's shadow, the greatest armada humanity had ever built waited in absolute darkness. Each vessel, a masterpiece of engineering, remained completely invisible to Confederation sensors. Lieutenant Ren Vasquez peered through the viewport of Phobos Delta II station. Mars hung like a rusty pendant in the blackness. "Any response from New Geneva?" Engineer Rajit Patel asked, fingers dancing across an ancient console. "Nothing yet. The Rathari are jamming all digital channels." Vasquez wiped sweat from his brow. "We need to activate the analog coils." "Those haven't been used in generations," Patel muttered. "Half the station doesn't even remember they exist." "That's the point," Vasquez replied. "The Rathari can't jam what they don't understand." As they worked to restore the old communication systems, a shadow moved across the far wall. Both men froze. "We're not alone," Patel whispered. The shadow solidified into a humanoid form, but with subtle differences: longer limbs, an oddly angled neck, eyes slightly too far apart. "Don't be alarmed," the figure said, its voice melodic yet unsettling. "I am Errol, and I am here to help." Vasquez's hand moved to his sidearm. "Zenotl!" Errol nodded. "Yes. I've been living among humans for 3 centuries, Lieutenant. But now I must break my observation protocol." He extended a hand that seemed almost, but not quite, human. The Rithari have planted logic bombs in your Saturn relay stations. I can help you neutralize them. Vasquez hesitated, then lowered his weapon. Why would you betray your kind? Errol's eyes, too wide, too brilliant, blinked slowly. The Confederation believes they're bringing order. But I've lived among you. I know what they don't. That humanity's chaotic nature is also its greatest strength. On the bridge of the Confederation flagship Vogar, General Sorak surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction. 300 warships approached the solar system from different vectors, converging on Earth. Status report, he demanded. All systems nominal. General, no resistance detected. Earth defense systems appear minimal. Sorak allowed himself a slight smile. As expected, begin the first wave attack in 30 minutes. In the darkness of space, the Confederation fleet crossed Mars's orbit, meeting no resistance. Confidence grew among the Rithari commanders. Then it began. A lieutenant's voice broke the silence. Sir, multiple detonations in the forward fleet. Sorak lurched forward. What? Across the void, a network of microscopic mines activated, tearing through 30% of the first wave. Invisible plasma beams lanced from Saturn's moons, disabling the propulsion systems of the Kolal contingent. The Leonov orbital barracks suddenly exploded from within, and 2 communication satellites went dark. Impossible, Sorak snarled. Their defenses were supposed to be primitive. Throughout Earth's communications network, dead zones appeared as drone attacks compromised software across the planet. At Phobos Delta II, Vasquez and Patel worked frantically to manually activate the analog circuits to restore the planetary defense system on Phobos and Venus. We've got 60 seconds before the drones breach the secondary firewall, Patel shouted, hands flying across the controls. Errol moved with inhuman speed, bypassing security protocols that would have taken humans hours to crack. There, PDS is back online. As the Second Confederation Fleet, Rithari's main force, pushed into the final sensor grid perimeter, something unprecedented happened. From beyond Neptune's orbit, 12,000 massive warships simultaneously materialized. The Gravemind Fleet, humanity's secret armada, emerged from decades of hiding. At the same moment, the warp disruptor system activated from Saturn, freezing all retreat attempts. On the command ship, Major Keller gave the order. Strike Sorak's vanguard with everything we have. No mercy. The Gravemind ships opened fire, reducing 200 Rithari vessels to debris in moments. General Sorak stared at the tactical display in disbelief as his fleet collapsed around him. Impossible, he whispered. With no other option, he activated the emergency channel. This is General Sorak of the Rithari Diplomatic Corps. I invoke the Channels of Mercy Protocol and request immediate cessation of hostilities. On the diplomatic channel, Errol appeared alongside Major Keller. Together, they signed the Exchange of Knowledge Agreement, beginning the process of technical cooperation between humans and Xenadal. Across the solar system, Patel and a team of Xenadal engineers worked to restore the analog communication network, reactivating 20 satellite stations across Venus, Mars, Europa, and Titan. In New Geneva, General Archer watched as radar signals returned from the entire Mercury grid, the first step toward reintegration with the galaxy. The political fallout was immediate. The Varnari, Ural, and Solvar species withdrew their forces from the combat zone, initiating referendums on whether to remain within a confederation that had denied the existence of human life. The Confederation Council held an emergency session, condemning the Rithari and initiating proceedings for cultural genocide and conspiracy to erase a sole designation. The balance of galactic power shifted dramatically. The Confederation was forced to amend the technical treaty, acknowledging Earth's sovereign rights and permitting North Star exploration. General Archer and Xenadal representatives signed a new alliance treaty, marking the beginning of an era of peace and cooperation between humans and Xenadal. On Luna Prime, Major Keller attended the dedication of the Optimistic Information Complex. A human child and a Zenaidal child ran hand in hand across the rebuilt training grounds of New Geneva, a symbol of a united future. As night fell, General Archer gazed up at the star-filled sky, murmuring, "They didn't warn them because they didn't know what we really are." The scene faded, leaving open the possibility of other threats lurking in the shadows beyond the Confederation. 3 centuries earlier, the first contact between humans and the Confederation had been cautiously optimistic. Humanity, having just achieved faster-than-light travel, discovered they were far from alone in the galaxy. The Galactic Confederation, a union of 12 advanced species, led by the crystalline Elodari, welcomed Earth with diplomatic overtures. For a brief moment, it seemed the dawn of a new era had arrived. Then came the Rathari assessment. "The human species represents a chaotic element," declared Sorek's predecessor in the Grand Triad Hall. "Their history is marred by violence. Their technology developed through conflict rather than harmony. They must be contained until properly civilized." Restrictions followed. Earth vessels were confined to their solar system. Knowledge was carefully filtered. Human representatives were kept at arm's length from Confederation decisions. For decades, humanity complied, hoping to prove their worthiness. But beneath the surface, suspicion grew. When communications with distant human colonies mysteriously failed, General Kerr Brenner, then commander of the Orion Fleet, began to investigate. What he discovered changed everything. The Rathari weren't merely containing humanity. They were systematically erasing human achievements from galactic records. Historical archives were being rewritten. The existence of distant human settlements was being denied. Earth was being prepared for a quiet extinction. Brenner's evidence never reached the Confederation Council. His ship was destroyed near Saturn, officially in a tragic navigation accident. But before his death, he had shared his findings with a single confidant, an observer from the shape-shifting Zenaidal species who had been studying humanity. That observer was Errol. "We are trained to watch, not to love." Errol had been told during his preparation for Earth assignment. "Humans are fascinating, but ultimately transitional. Observe, record, but never interfere." Yet, after 3 centuries among humans, after witnessing their resilience, their capacity for both terrible destruction and breathtaking creation, Errol had come to a different conclusion. When Daniel Croft, a human friend who had saved Errol's life during the orbital bombardment of 2359, died protecting refugee children, something changed in the Zenaidal observer. The emotional investment Errol had been warned against had taken root. Humans weren't just another species to be catalogued. They were worth saving. Breaking all protocols, Errol contacted other Zenaidal observers. 12 agreed to help. Together, they began sharing Confederation technical secrets with a select group of human leaders. Over the following decades, this clandestine alliance built Project Gravemind, the secret fleet that would become humanity's last hope. When the war began, the Confederation expected a quick surrender. The intelligence provided by the Rathari indicated minimal defenses, outdated technology, and a fragmented command structure. They didn't know about the underground complex at New Geneva, where General Archer had spent 20 years preparing for this day. They didn't know about the analog communication network built on principles so ancient that modern Confederation systems couldn't detect, let alone decode them. They didn't know about the obsidian hex sheath technology, derived from Zenaidal stealth concepts, but radically enhanced by human engineers. Most importantly, they didn't know about Gravemind, 12,000 warships constructed in the darkness beyond Neptune, each more advanced than anything in the Confederation arsenal. "You have to understand," Errol explained to Vasquez as they worked to restore communications at Phobos. "The Confederation believes in predictable evolution. Species develop according to known patterns. But humans, you skip steps. You make intuitive leaps. It terrifies them. Vasquez snorted. So they decided to wipe us out rather than try to understand us? The Rathari did, Errol corrected. They've been manipulating Confederation policy for centuries. The Eladari judges merely enforce consensus. They don't create it. And the others? The Sulvar? Altari? Hezari? They just went along with genocide? Errol's alien features twisted in what might have been shame. Most believe humans died out naturally decades ago. The Rathari have been erasing your existence from official records for generations. This explained the shock on the faces of Confederation officers when the historical resistance footage began broadcasting across the galaxy. For many, it was the first proof in decades that humans still existed. As the battle raged across the solar system, the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear. The microscopic mines that shredded the first wave of Confederation ships were products of Earth's nano-engineering program. Technology the Confederation had deemed impossible for humans to develop for at least another century. The plasma weapons firing from Saturn's moons utilized principles the Rathari had explicitly withheld from Earth scientists. The communication disruption that crippled Confederation coordination stemmed from a profound understanding of their quantum entanglement protocols, knowledge that should have been far beyond human capability. Most devastating was the warp disruptor system. When activated, it created a localized distortion in space-time that prevented faster-than-light travel. Confederation ships couldn't retreat. They couldn't call for reinforcements. They were trapped in normal space, facing an enemy they had grievously underestimated. On the bridge of his flagship, General Sorak watched his carefully orchestrated attack crumble. How? He demanded of his tactical officer. How could they have built all this without our knowledge? The officer had no answer. The Rathari surveillance network had reported with absolute certainty that human technology remained primitive, their defenses minimal. Those reports had been lies, fed to the network by Xenatal observers who had decided humanity deserved to survive. Lieutenant Saw was not a soldier by training. Before the war, he had been a communications specialist at the Lunar Academy. Now, he found himself in the Hive Nest, the central communications hub beneath New Geneva, trying to maintain contact with the Gravemind fleet. The Rathari are jamming everything, he reported to Major Keller. They've adapted to our frequency shifts faster than expected. Keller's expression hardened. Can you get through on the analog bands? I'm trying, but they're hitting those too now. They must have figured out our strategy. We need those channels, Lieutenant. If we lose contact with Gravemind at this stage, she didn't need to finish. Without coordination, the massive fleet would be vulnerable despite its technological advantages. Saw closed his eyes, thinking. Then, what if we use the old radio telescope array? The one at Arecibo 2. It's so outdated the Rathari might not even be monitoring it. Keller's eyes widened. Can you make it work? Maybe. It wasn't designed for military communications, but he straightened. I can try. While battles raged across space, Lieutenant Saw raced against time, repurposing century-old equipment to maintain humanity's lifeline to its defenders. On Phobos, Vasquez and Errol had their own crisis. The station's gravity stabilizers were failing, and temperature was dropping rapidly. We've got maybe 20 minutes before life support gives out completely, Patel reported grimly. Vasquez glanced at the communications console. And still no contact with New Geneva or the fleet. Errol studied the station schematics. There's an auxiliary power system 3 levels down. It might be enough to restore basic functions. That section is exposed to vacuum, Vasquez pointed out. The hull breach from the drone attack. I can survive vacuum for short periods, Errol interrupted. My physiology is more adaptable than yours. Vasquez hesitated. Trusting a Xenatal with their lives went against everything he'd been taught. But what choice did they have? Do it, he decided. But if this is some kind of trick... It isn't, Errol assured him. "I've lived alongside humans too long to betray you now." His form began to shift slightly, his skin hardening, respiratory openings sealing. "I'll need access codes for the auxiliary systems." As Patel provided the necessary information, Vasquez couldn't help but ask, "Why? Why help us at all?" Errol paused at the airlock. "Because 3 centuries ago, I watched a human mother die protecting her child during a food riot in New Shanghai. She had nothing to gain, everything to lose, yet she did it without hesitation." His alien features formed something like a smile. "That day, I realized your species' chaos isn't a flaw. It's the source of your greatness." The airlock cycled open, and Errol disappeared into the darkness. In the depths of space, the battle had reached its climax. The Gravemind fleet, fully revealed and operational, surrounded what remained of the Confederation forces. On the command ship, General Archer received Sorak's surrender request. "He's asking for mercy," Communications Officer Lin reported, "invoking the Channels of Mercy protocol." Archer's expression remained impassive. After what they planned for Earth, they deserve none. Major Keller stepped closer. "Sir, if we destroy them completely, we become what they accused us of being. They were going to wipe us out without a second thought." "Major." "Yes, sir. But we're not them." She met his gaze steadily. "If we want a place in this galaxy, we need to show we're better than their worst opinions of us." For a long moment, Archer said nothing. Then, "Open the channel. Tell General Sorak I'll accept his surrender, with conditions." Within hours, the exchange of knowledge agreement was signed. The Rathari would withdraw completely from the solar system. All falsified records regarding humanity would be corrected. Earth would receive full member status in the Confederation, with all the rights that entailed. In return, humanity would not pursue further military action against Confederation worlds. The warp disruptor technology would be placed under joint control, never to be used as a weapon of aggression. It was not justice, not truly, but it was the beginning of a new relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than fear and contempt. The aftermath brought rapid change. Varnari, Ural, and Solvar representatives arrived on Earth, eager to establish direct diplomatic relations with the species they had been told was nearly extinct. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. The Rathari faced consequences within the Confederation. Sorak and his inner circle were removed from power, charged with manipulating council decisions and conspiracy to commit genocide. The Elodari judges, confronted with evidence of how thoroughly they had been deceived, instituted reforms to prevent similar manipulation in the future. Historical archives were open to all member species, ensuring that no civilization's achievements could be erased again. Most significantly, the alliance between humans and Xenadal flourished. The 12 observers who had broken their non-interference mandate were granted asylum on Earth. Their knowledge, combined with human innovation, led to technological advances that benefited both species. At the dedication of the Optimistic Information Complex on Luna Prime, Major Keller watched a human child and a Xenadal child play together on the rebuilt training grounds. The sight brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Something wrong, Major?" General Archer had approached quietly. She shook her head. "Just thinking about how close we came to losing everything." "We survived. We always do." He looked up at the Earth, hanging like a blue jewel in the lunar sky. "That's what they never understood about us." Later, as night fell across the lunar base, Archer stood alone on an observation deck, gazing at the stars. The galaxy that had so nearly rejected humanity now lay open before them. "They didn't warn them," he murmured to himself, "because they didn't know what we really are. What humanity was, what they had always been, was survivors, adaptable, unpredictable, capable of both terrible destruction and astonishing creation. The Confederation had seen only the chaos in human nature. They had failed to recognize that from chaos came innovation, courage, and an indomitable will to endure. Now they knew, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years after the war, humanity's position in the Confederation was secure. The technical treaty had been amended to acknowledge Earth's sovereign rights, including the right to maintain its own defense fleet and conduct unrestricted exploration beyond the solar system. The North Star Exploration Initiative, launched with great ceremony from the rebuilt orbital platforms, sent the first joint human zennatal expeditions into unexplored regions of the galaxy. Errol, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Confederation Council, had become a respected voice in galactic politics. His unique perspective, part zennatal, part honorary human after centuries of immersion, helped bridge cultural divides that had seemed insurmountable before the war. Lieutenant Vasquez, promoted to commander after his actions on Phobos, led the security detail for the diplomatic corps. He and Errol had formed an unlikely friendship, bound by their shared experience during the conflict. "Do you ever regret it?" Vasquez asked one evening, as they watched the sunset from the New Geneva mountain range. "Choosing our side?" Errol considered the question. "My people believe in balance above all. For centuries. I thought that meant non-interference, perfect neutrality." His gaze shifted to where a group of human and zennatal children played in the distance. "Now I understand that sometimes maintaining balance requires taking a stand." Below them, in the vast underground complex that had once been humanity's last redoubt, the war room had been converted into a museum. School groups toured the facility daily, learning about the conflict that had nearly ended human civilization and the alliance that had saved it. Major Keller. Now, General Keller, following Archer's retirement, occasionally led these tours herself. She felt it important that the next generation understand both how close they had come to extinction and how their survival had depended on cooperation between species. The Rathari believed that progress required uniformity, she told the wide-eyed children. They couldn't accept that different species might follow different evolutionary paths. But diversity isn't weakness, it's strength. The galaxy is richer because we're all in it together. It was a message that resonated across worlds. The rigid hierarchy that had characterized the Confederation for millennia began to loosen. Member species that had long been marginalized found new voices in council deliberations. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Remnants of the old Rathari power structure whispered in shadowy corners of the galaxy, resentful of their diminished status. Other forces, unknown even to the Confederation, watched the emerging alliance between humans and zennatal with calculating interest. The peace that had been won was real, but fragile. The galaxy remained a dangerous place. Yet, for the first time in centuries, humanity faced that danger as a recognized equal among the stars. Not perfect, not flawless, but valued for the very qualities that had once marked them for destruction. Their unpredictability, their adaptability, their endless capacity for both creation and destruction. Their humanity. In the observatory atop New Geneva's highest peak, retired General Archer spent his evenings studying the stars. Though no longer in command, he remained a respected advisor to the Earth Defense Council. Tonight, he had a visitor. "The children asked about you today," General Keller said as she entered. "They wanted to know if you really saved the world." Archer smiled faintly. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That it was never just one person. That it took all of us, humans, zennatal, everyone who believed we deserved a chance." He nodded, turning back to the telescope. "They're out there, you know."
"Who?"
"Whoever comes next. The Rathari weren't the only ones who feared us. There will be others." Keller joined him at the viewport. Beyond the protective dome, stars blazed in the mountain darkness.
"Do you think we're ready?"
More ready than we were. He adjusted the telescope's focus. We know now what we're capable of. So do they. That changes everything. In the silent moments that followed, both generals contemplated the vastness before them. The war had been won, but the greater challenge remained. Forging a future in which humanity's place among the stars was secured not through force of arms, but through the strength of their contributions to galactic civilization. It would not be easy. Old prejudices died hard. New threats emerged from unexpected quarters. Yet the alliance that had been forged in fire, between humans and Xenotl, between Earth and the reformed Confederation, offered hope that had not existed before. As dawn broke over the mountains, Archer finally spoke again. "We'll be all right, Elena. We always are." Keller smiled. "Because they didn't know what we really are." "No," Archer agreed, "but now they do." And that knowledge, that understanding of humanity's true nature, with all its complexity and contradiction, was perhaps the greatest victory of all. In the halls of the Confederation Council, in the classrooms of 100 worlds, the story was told of how humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger, of how an ancient observer had chosen compassion over duty, of how diversity and cooperation had prevailed against uniformity and fear. It was a story still being written, its ending unknown. But as the human and Xenotl children played beneath the blue skies of Earth, as the North Star exploration vessels ventured into uncharted regions of space, as former enemies learned to become allies, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating what humanity really was. They were explorers and defenders, creators and destroyers, chaotic and ordered, fragile and indomitable. They were human. And at last, that was enough.